You know, a new standard for tiny houses, ICC/THIA 1215, was supposed to be a huge step forward for legal, affordable housing. But according to its critics, it's turned into a massive controversy. They're saying that this new invented category, the small residential unit, or SRU, has basically hijacked the standard. The accusation is that it creates a private regulatory system, one that deliberately sidesteps federal transportation law. So, how on earth did we get here? Let's unpack this tale of two labels. Okay, so here are the two main characters in our story. On your left, you've got a standard federal VIN label. You know, the kind you'd see on any trailer. And on the right, this new data plate that came out of the 1215 standard. They look totally different because, well, they are. They represent two completely different regulatory worlds. And that difference, that's where this whole fight begins. All right, let's break down what these two labels actually are and why the difference between them is so critical for everyone involved. Builders, owners, and yeah, even the cops on the highway. So first up, the VIN certification label. This is the official, legally recognized document for pretty much any vehicle on a public road. It's the manufacturer putting their hand up, self-certifying and saying, yep, this thing is safe for the highway and we are taking full legal responsibility for it. And just look what's on this label. You've got the VIN, the vehicle identification number, you've got the gross vehicle weight rating, the GVWR, but most importantly, you have this crystal clear statement, this vehicle conforms to all applicable U.S. federal motor vehicle safety standards. There's no ambiguity here. This is a transportation document through and through. And now, let's meet the challenger, the small residential unit, or SRU, data plate. On paper, its purpose is completely different. It's designed as an info plate for building officials, right? It gives them data like roof snow load, thermal values, stuff they need for when the home gets installed. Basically, it's about building, not about driving. But here's where it gets interesting. The source material argues that there's a clue, just a single line item hidden on this new building plate, and it exposes a massive conflict with federal law. And this just perfectly illustrates what this plate is supposed to be. The standard literally says to put it inside the house, near the electrical panel or under the kitchen sink. It's treated like an internal building component, not some external certification that a highway patrol officer could ever see. And there it is, the clue. Slipped in among all the building stuff, snow load, seismic category, is this one little line, gross weight of structure. Now that might not sound like a big deal, but trust me, that's the key that unlocks this entire mess. The source does not mince words on this one. They call this addition not a technical nuance, but legal evasion. That's a really serious accusation, suggesting this was done on purpose with some major legal consequences in mind. So here's the deal. Building codes and vehicle regulations, they speak completely different languages. Building codes talk about things like dead load for the structure's weight. But federal transportation law, it uses terms like gross vehicle weight rating. The term gross weight belongs squarely in the world of transportation, not building code. Okay, let's pivot to the law itself and see what the Federal Department of Transportation actually requires to make something street legal. The federal process is incredibly specific, and there's no wiggle room. The manufacturer takes all the legal responsibility, they assign a VIN, they have to physically attach a permanent certification label, and on that label, they have to certify the official weight ratings. That's it. That's the only legal pathway for highway vehicles that the federal government recognizes. And this, right here, is the bottom line. According to federal law, you cannot, I repeat, cannot replace that physical permanent label with a stack of papers, an engineer's letter, or some other kind of plate you've hidden under the sink. There is no such thing as a documentation-only substitute, period. So how did this happen? Well, the source document alleges that these pieces were all put together very deliberately to create a workaround, a way to bypass federal law. They call it an Easter egg compliance scheme. So let's put the puzzle together, piece by piece, just like they allegedly did. First, you start with the SRU data plate. It looks and feels like a totally legitimate building code thing. Next, you quietly slip in that one little piece of transportation lingo, gross weight, right onto that building plate, kind of hoping nobody really notices the crossover. Then, in a completely different part of the standard, over in section 702.1, you bring up the authority of the Department of Transportation. You say the chassis has to comply with DOT requirements for the weights that are shown back on that data plate. And here's the final and most critical step. You conveniently leave out the one and only thing federal law actually demands as proof. The standard never ever says you have to have the federally required VIN certification label. Honestly, this quote from the source just sums it up perfectly. The standard borrows the language of transportation law. It borrows the authority of transportation law, but it doesn't want to take on any of the legal responsibilities or the compliance rules that come with it. So what? What are the actual real-world consequences of all this? Why should anyone outside of the tiny house bubble care about this regulatory fight? Well, according to the source, the stakes are incredibly high. First off, all the legal risk gets shifted away from the manufacturers and dumped right onto small builders and the people who buy these homes. Second, it creates this legally confusing hybrid. Is it a vehicle? Is it a building? Which is a nightmare for insurance and registration. It also puts building inspectors in an impossible spot. The source even alleges this is a form of market manipulation that helps big manufacturers. And at the end of the day, they argue the whole standard is in direct conflict with federal law. So that leaves us with this one giant question. Is this new standard a genuinely helpful innovation that's pushing us toward a solution for the housing crisis? Or is it a dangerous and deliberate loophole that's dismantling federal safety rules, shifting all the risk on consumers, and messing with the market? That right there is the heart of this entire debate.